you trouble.
Low. And we're live. It is Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, 5:04 p.m. We are 4 minutes late today because of this guy. This mouse ran out of gasoline, and I bet you didn't know that mice run on gasoline, but they do. They run on gas, and this guy ran out of gas, and the result was that I had to refill it. But then when I took the mouse to the mouse filling station and plugged in the thing, it got the mouse. Then when I took out it was all filled up with gasoline, and I took the hose out, and then the mouse would not reconnect to the computer, which meant that poor David Priess was sitting there unable to be raptured into lieu of fun, and he cried and cried. And poor Kate was looking at me like I was insane because my mouse, though fully gassed up, was unable to be used to bring David in, launch the show. And all of this took exactly 3.5 minutes to resolve, which means that we're not allowed to have fun anymore. But we are allowed to have David Priess. And Kate has a very important question for him.
Hey, David, is that a rough
Yes.
approximation of the world behind your head?
It is a very rough approximation of the world behind my head. And do you want to hear where it came from?
I sure do.
So there is a real story here. So in this house in which I live, we had just moved in several years ago now, and my wife was pregnant with our son. And in lieu of getting us a gift, an old colleague of mine from CIA, in fact, a previous manager of mine who became a friend, her husband is an artist and draws commercial quality cartoon art. And he offered to draw a mural for the kid's bedroom or some other part of the house. And I said, that sounds great. That's unique. That's special. Yes, please. But I was thinking ahead several years, and I thought, that's going to be great for the first 2 years of our young son's life. After about 2 or 3 years, it is going to suck to have cartoon animals all over a wall of the house.
That's
So
fair.
I said, we like global stuff. Can you do a map of the world instead?
David?
I am a globalist. In fact, if you read the secret code of the
Rootless
coastlines that are
cosmopolitan.
incorrect, it spells Soros. It's horrible. So he said, yes, he could do a map if he had a map in front of him to model from, but he would only do it if he could also do cartoon animals. So I said, fine, we can live with that. So this is my backdrop for some TV things and regular Zooms. But I'm strategically placed because to my right, I've placed a stack of books. To my left is a cactus because Australia is largely covered by a purple kangaroo. Africa is largely covered by a large elephant who is now masked by the books. If I scroll up, you can all see the panda that occupies most of Asia, who appears to be pooping on my head. And off over here are the Americas with bison and llamas and all kinds of other animals. So yes,
Awesome.
it is
It's
a map
kind
of the world.
versatile.
It has multiple uses. One of which was the first time I did a TV hit from this seat. I had the camera slightly differently angled like this. And somebody pointed out afterwards, David, why do you have Shrek's ear on your head? And I didn't realize that Borneo looks remarkably like a cartoon ear coming out of my head if I have
That's
the
awesome.
wrong angle.
Can I confess something about your map that has struck me almost every time?
No Sri Lanka?
We do a Zoom meeting. No, I've never noticed that because
Oh, yeah,
your
right.
head
Oops.
is in the way of where Sri Lanka would be. And so it actually it hides the lack of Sri Lanka. But David and I do a morning Zoom meeting with the Lawfare team every day, so I'm very, very used to this map. And yet every time I look at it, I think of I forget which David Zucker movie it is in, where Mikhail Gorbachev takes like a rag and wipes the jutting discoloration on his forehead off, and it just comes off. And the thing is, the Indian subcontinent
Naked
is
gun.
sticking down in David's head in exactly the position that it would be Gorbachev's thing. And so I think, like, here's Gorbachev having wiped it off and put it on the wall in back of him.
I mean,
All right.
it is. I mean, it's like
odd.
it is,
I know.
It is like kind of. I mean, like no, this is like it's like a Rorschach test. There's like that behind David could be literally anything,
including Gorbachev's birthmark.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But I go side, you go to this side, you see a little bit more of Arabia and Africa and the Mediterranean, and
I'm really
start to get a sense of the map.
The shading is interesting. Yeah. I guess that's kind of universal
shading,
to maps, but like why it's so much darker at the edges, and then like the light.
Being a map nerd myself, I'm horrified by the fact that it's not geographically accurate. It's missing major islands. The shading indicates there are mountain ranges where there are no mountain ranges.
Have you heard of these things called Sharpie?
But of course, I'm not going to tell him
Sharpie markers. You can just like color one in.
Yeah, my artistic skill would not make it better. It would look like a 2-year-old was trying to.
I bet you could
edit a map.
Yeah. I bet you could do it.
Well,
maybe Sri Lanka.
I just want to say I think that the map and the dog shirt match today, and they are roughly the same shades.
Yeah. We're all kind of autumnal.
Yeah, exactly. And Kate has a new shirt from Etsy. And so it's good. It's all good. All of which brings us to David. You are the only guest in 180 episodes of In Lieu of Fun who has ever left with homework.
Oh yeah.
And so before you give the class your book report here, for those who need a refresher on your assignment, what were you here to talk about, and what was the assignment you went home with, or stayed home with, since you did it from the same room you're in now?
It is all a blur, Ben and Kate, but I believe we were talking about giving intelligence to presidents, meaning intelligence briefings, not intellectual capacity, which would be nice, but giving the PDB and other documents. And Kate asked the question, which I was glad to hear, because I'd thought of it before and suppressed it because I didn't have an answer. So I never wanted to actually get this question in a public forum, which was, so why does the word intelligence refer to secret information? And how did we get there? Or something like that, Kate.
Yeah,
you
it was like
a
very. I thought I was really embarrassed about asking it, but I was like, "This is my only question, and I just have to ask it." And like, I was wondering where where intelligence as these briefings, like how that got taken up by basically like how we started referring to secret, to like spy organizations as intelligence.
Yeah, I was fascinated by as you remember, I was fascinated by the question and said, I'm not just going to say, I don't know, and, let's talk about something else. I said, I want to find out. So I did, and then I forgot about it because things got busy. But I've refreshed my memory. I did what I think most people should do in a situation like this, which is actually consult some experts. Yeah. So first I went to 2 former historians of the International Spy Museum here in Washington, D.C., and I asked them about it, one of whom has done more dated historical research than the other. So he's an expert on World War I intelligence and has done a lot of work on times even before then. And they gave me some leads. And then I consulted an English major who specialized on the Shakespearean era to get some additional information. And then I asked a couple of people who could actually help me half pronounce a couple of Latin words, since I never took Latin. So let me hit you with some knowledge that comes from all of them. Intelligence, as a word in the English language, it sure sounded to me like it came from the French, because of intelligence being a French-looking word, and because of the long intelligence tradition in France and the close ties between France and England for those years. And that would be wrong. In fact, it did not. The word used in French for intelligence is renseignement, which is not a version of intelligence.
Oh no,
but it's
that's
not
not the
entirely
word for
wrong
intelligent.
because it turns out
Intelligent is actually the same in French,
no,
basically. But it's not. But they
no,
use a
that
different term. What's the term that they use?
yeah, for the intelligence business, they use raisonnement more than the word intelligence.
Reason
Yeah,
discernement. I'll look it up.
yeah,
Um,
raisonnement, and I thought that's interesting, but it turns out there is a French connection, if you will, and
No
it is
pun
from
intended.
Latin. Oh, pun fully intended. Ben. That one. I'm
Are you
sure I'll
picking
have
your
some
feet?
that are
Did
that
you
are
pick
not.
your feet in Poughkeepsie?
Oh no, you're
wait,
going
what?
old Gene Hackman on me.
What?
I am.
What?
It's
Yeah,
from the French Connection.
just don't watch the French Connection too, because
No, it's a
it
terrible
ruins the
movie.
experience of the
No, but
first
the French
one.
Connection is a brilliant movie.
Really?
So in
Yeah.
the French Connect, the first one is classic. It's really well framed.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, you should watch it.
Yeah. Okay.
So intelligence, the Latin origin is what intelligentsia, which is the noun for capacity of understanding, and it definitely means this intelligence, right? It's about comprehending things. Now that went through Old French, meaning essentially the same thing, and like so many words in Old French, it found its way into English between 1100 to 1400, such that by the 1400s, certainly the capacity for understanding, there was a word in Old English called intelligence that actually captured that sense of general truths. Now, at that point, it's still talking about this intelligence, so it doesn't get to your answer yet. But at some point, it started to evolve.
1400s?
Yeah, we're like
1300s to 1400s.
Okay.
Yeah.
so Canterbury
and then at
Tales.
some point, yeah. And then at some point in the transition from Old English, it took on a slightly different and additional meaning of not just the capacity for understanding, but also information received. Certainly by the 1500s, it was done that way. So the flourishing of the English language and the huge vocabulary expansion of the 1500s into the Shakespearean era in the late 16th century, that's when it really started taking on the additional meaning. First of information received by the 1550s, and then by the 1580s, the word was actually used and associated with what we would call spying. And this is exactly the same time that Queen Elizabeth was using Sir Francis Walsingham as her spy master. And if he didn't invent the term, he was one of the first to actually use it regularly in his dispatches with her. So probably we're talking somewhere between 1550s and 1570s, the word took on that slightly additional meaning of not just information received, but secret information somehow combined, collaborated, processed in order to give a better understanding, which was the original meaning of the word. Now, of course, after that, it has been used that way ever since. Daniel Defoe, famous for...
But the point is,
Yeah.
the meaning, the current meaning of the word intelligence is quite old.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going back at least
Which is,
450 years.
by the
Yeah.
way, not what I was expecting when I asked you that question.
Right.
I thought that it was like going to
Yeah.
be some invention of the CIA, even though that was a stupid,
No.
like
Well,
American
it's interesting
exceptionalist
that-
thing to think.
There are many newspapers in America in the 1800s who adopted the word intelligencer, and there are still a few around.
Yeah.
I think Seattle eventually changed its name, but many local newspapers used the word the Daily Intelligence or the Intelligencer, and it was used in a sense of information being collected, but it did have the connotation of, we're going to give you a scoop here, which is similar to the secret meaning.
I don't want to bring this all back to like kind of like questions of linguistics or cognitive science and like or whatever, but this is kind of a fascinating thing, right? You can have a word that like it's not like it means the opposite. Like intelligence both means a cognitive kind of thinking ability, and it means a noun, like a collection of things that people have thought about and like have decided, like a product that they give you. And like that kind of like nuance is such a to understand it is like such a product of culture and context, and it just like it's very interesting to me that we expect Like that's just like one tiny example, but it's such a great example. And like the best part is that it has like actually a super rich history on both sides of like how the word is
Yeah.
used. So I think that that's
Yeah.
kind of fascinating.
It has
I love that.
it's interesting, you're right. It has that general meaning and then the specific meaning, which are related in a sense. It's not like some English words which are horrible. Sanction is one of them. If somebody has sanctions put upon them, they
Oh
are
yeah.
punished. They are in a sense not allowed to do it. But if you sanction something, you allow it. It's a verb that means a positive, and it's a negative that means almost its opposite. That's why English, I think, is
There are
horrible
very
to
few
learn.
words like that, but there are others. Cleave
Yeah.
is another.
Cleave. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cleave's a good-
Strike means to hit, except in baseball where it means to miss.
Just accept.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
now
that's a
actually-
good one.
Actually, but it's technically the same meaning because it's the pitcher throws the strike.
It's a pitcher strike.
Ed,
Right.
You once liked
Yeah.
this. This is a good example. Federalism is
Yes,
like
federalism in Canada
I-
means, and in early America means the opposite of what
and
it
I
means
have
in
literally
contemporary.
sat in meetings and been like, I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying federalism and you're talking about in this sense? And they're like, of course. And everyone in the room is like, obviously we're talking about like the power of states. And I'm like, but you do understand that like the idea of like a federation is that like they all come together to
Yeah.
make a national government. So like I don't understand. Like those seem
The other
like those seem opposite each other.
no,
And
there are
then,
a bunch of those. There are a bunch of those words, and they all have interesting stories. Okay, so I'm going to surprise David here
Oh, yeah,
by
you have a
using
poll.
using his presence
and I'm
to
drinking
do
water,
some market
so
research.
I'm getting a glass of wine.
To do some market
That's
research
not a bad idea.
using you all. So for the past several months, David and I have been cooking up a scheme. And the scheme is to launch, yes, we rub our hands with glee and we say things like, the scheme
do.
is, yeah, we do. The scheme is to create, without changing Lawfare at all and without putting any of Lawfare behind a paywall, which we are ideologically committed to never doing, to create a product that is exclusively for people who support the site. And the one of the reasons that we moved this show from Zoom to Crowdcast was that David and I were experimenting with platforms that we could use for Lawfare Live, which is why if you look at the bottom of my screen, it does not say Benjamin Wittes, it says Lawfare, even though this is actually just this thing that Kate and I do. It really has nothing to do with Lawfare, except that it does have something to do with Lawfare. And what it has to do with Lawfare is we've been kind of using in lieu of fun to road test what would a set of Lawfare Live-like events look like. And the basic idea that we've come up with is be a combination of the whole thing the whole product would be organized around live engagement with audiences, not unlike the audience that we've built around in lieu of fun. It would sometimes it would be authors of Lawfare pieces taking questions on their pieces, engaging with audience about their pieces. Sometimes it would be panels of people talking about various issues that had broken that day. Sometimes it would be live recordings of podcasts. For example, we recorded Rational Security today. There's no particular reason we couldn't do that in conjunction with a Lawfare Live event. So we have a lot of options in terms of content, and we have a lot of really cool people. So here is the problem. Crowdcast integrates seamlessly with Patreon. Patreon, however, does not let you grandfather in your existing donors. And we have a lot of people who have supported Lawfare by means as primitive as sending us a check, to, people who go to the site and click support Lawfare and thereby use Stripe for it. And they are not on Patreon, which we've never used. And Patreon won't let us grandfather them in. So one option is set it up on Patreon. It integrates seamlessly with this platform, which has a lot of good features and is getting less buggy. But it also means saying to our existing donors, hey, we know you've been supporting us for a long time. Now you have to pay again, which seems really mean and disrespectful and unfair. Option number 2 is to use a cumbersome workaround. And we've identified a few possible cumbersome workarounds that can do it. The third option is to actually invest in building doing the tech development to do the integration that we need. And so I have put, for the first time, a deadly serious poll in the polls asking you guys for your input on what you think is reasonable and fair.
So can I make a suggestion?
By all means.
That I think would be an elegant workaround suggestion that would dovetail with number 1 in the poll option, which is that basically I think that Patreon will let you, and you could send a message to your existing subscribers that is separate from your new subscribers and set up 2 similar but different feeds. Like, you could do that. Or you could create some type of you could create 2 type of tiers.
Right, but even if you have, but the point is, if they're not on Patreon and you link Crowdcast access to being a Patreon supporter, they can't get in.
Okay,
We're talking
but my point is that at the very least, your existing supporters are going to have to sign up for Patreon and pay $1.
I mean, that would be one solution, would be to say...
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying, is you basically do 2 feeds and you make them kind of maybe you even do a cutoff for sign up. Yeah. People can't sign up for the after 2 months. If you haven't signed up as an existing user for the Patreon feed, then you can't anymore, just to make sure that no one gets the link and exploits the lower rate.
I want to give a shout out to go ahead, finish up, please.
Oh, I was just going to say that what you can my understanding, and I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but they might have updated how they're running it, but the last time that I was on Patreon, the back end, you could do it so that you have tiered users of your subscribers, and people can pay for different levels of access, but that's really up to you, right? You could give them all of the same information if you wanted to. And so that's kind of what I'm saying is send to your existing subscribers, please pay this. We apologize. Pay this $1 to sign up for Patreon. Use Patreon. We're trying to move over to this system, and then move them over. And then they're in one type of feed. And then there's and then to the rest of the world gets the main thing. And you only keep that avenue of subscription for the existing members open for a certain amount of time to make sure that it doesn't get out and start being dispersed as a cheap way to sign up for Lawfare. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does make sense. And I saw a version of that in a comment from Drew. Thank you, Drew, because in all of our brainstorming, we hadn't come up with this, which is have a level opened up for a brief window of time, just long enough for an enterprising young intern who has the list of all of our...
Really weird. Anyway, I don't know why this keeps happening.
Well, people
have we added Crowdcast to try to solve this problem for us?
We should flag it. I flagged it for Crowdcast yesterday, and I will flag it again. It seems like people are refreshing, and it is working.
Everyone says it's back with a refresh. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
okay, that's great.
We lost about 30 seconds. Anyway, people, if you could fill out the poll and express your views on it, I am very interested, and David and I and some of the team are meeting to discuss this on Friday, and we should be and it would be good to know what people think we can is and isn't a reasonable way to go.
The one thing I will say, Ben, I don't know what your like your kind of like your older subscriber base database looks like, but sometimes those things can be pretty messy. And like sometimes that's just gotta be a hand coded fix up. Honestly. And so like that's kind of like I don't know. Maybe David is right in that like you give it to an intern or you give it to a person who is not like working right now because they're laid off from tech companies in India and you hire them. So like there's lots of people who would be willing to do this type of data entry for you.
Well, David, as we have been speaking, I have a piece of news for you.
Oh my
which
goodness.
is that John Harwood tweets, Donald Trump has named a former House aide to Devin Nunes as Inspector General of the intelligence community. I am told that the former House aide in question went to an unaccredited law school, and
The aide? The aide went to the law
yes,
school? Okay.
although I have not confirmed that. David, what do we know about the Inspector General of the intelligence community being staffed by former Devin Nunes staffer? Are we for that?
It's the first I've heard of it, but it's both unsurprising and unwelcome.
Sorry, for like a second
I don't
there,
see
like
anything.
his head was just like that,
Yeah.
and I was like,
I mean, look at this from Trump's perspective and from John Ratcliffe's perspective, which is, have they received any feedback or consequences to tell them that they shouldn't put in Devin Nunes or a clone or a staffer or anyone in this position? There's no reason not to. I'm a little surprised they would even bother at this point with a few months left, 40 some days before the election. But why not change the headline again? It's a position that usually requires confirmation, is it not?
I believe it is a Senate confirmed position. I think almost all of the inspectors general are.
Yeah, and I have to say that before this year, the confirmation process for senior officials in the intelligence community has generally been not just as good as, but better than the approval process for many other positions in the Senate. That is, there's generally been good bipartisanship in terms of looking at it as a serious position that requires certain characteristics. With the Ratcliffe approval, however, that appears quite different, given that it wasn't that long ago when you had Republicans signaling, don't nominate this guy, Mr. President. He's clearly not up to the job. And then this year it changes. So I'm not totally surprised by it, but it is disturbing because, as we discovered with the whole whistleblower case, the IG in the intelligence community can play a crucial role in important ways. And this comes on the same day as that big Politico report this morning, when the report came out that many sources have shown that there is something weird going on in CIA in terms of how Russian intelligence is getting to the White House, including the part of the report that said that the general counsel of the CIA is reviewing all finished intelligence on Russia before it goes to the White House, which is very unusual. The CIA said that the GC is not impeding intelligence from getting out, but did not address the issue of why the GC is looking at the intelligence in the first place. So it's a really interesting time for generals, counsel, and inspectors general to be nominated for the intelligence community when there's so much uncertainty about the process of giving unvarnished intelligence to the White House in the first place.
All right, so you mentioned the Politico story today, which is a down the center lane David Priess kind of story. So I'm interested. First of all, I have actually some questions about it, but why don't you describe the story and what you made of it today for those viewers who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, there's one part of the story that's I think, less disturbing than it appears, and then there's one part that's more disturbing than is getting credit for. The less disturbing part is the fact that the report says multiple sources report that Gina Haspel, the director, has taken a very special interest in Russia House, the part of the CIA dealing with Russian intelligence, and is reviewing its material very carefully, asking really tough questions of analysts, etc. Yes, that could be politicizing it, but it's the job of the director to do that. And in fact, a good director does ask hard questions of the intelligence officers in her organization. So I'm not as worried about the fact that Gina Haspel appears to be asking really tough questions on an issue of importance. That in and of itself is not a sign of politicization. That's also a sign of good leadership. It can go bad, of course, and it can be for the wrong reasons, but by itself, that's not alarming. The thing that's more disturbing is the general counsel side. There's not a historical norm of the general counsel of the CIA reviewing analytic products before they go out to policy customers. That is not the norm. And if in fact the general counsel is regularly reviewing these products, something different is going on. And under the circumstances we're in, something different smells funny and looks like it needs some investigation. I haven't yet seen a response from the oversight committees in Congress, but it is certainly legitimate for them to bring the general counsel in and ask, why are you reviewing all this and what are you reviewing it for? If not to impede analysis, what's the plausible reason that you have offered for looking at all of this intelligence before it goes to the White House?
Yeah, so that I thought that was like the weirdest thing about that story was the claim that Courtney Elwood, the CIA's general counsel, is routinely reviewing Russia House work product.
Yeah.
Hang on just a second. So I just posted a second poll question, and I'm going to amend it to make clear that this is for new users, not the legacy users. Thank you to those who pointed out that I was not clear on this.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad you removed the suggestion of someone who said that the fair price would be $1 million per
at some
month.
point, Ben.
Yeah.
This is terrible. Your poll design sucks. This is you're like, should we do this onerous, terrible thing, or should we do this other thing that seems really reasonable? Is it totally fair?
I'm not sure that's terrible design. I think that's pointing to a result. Depends on the purpose of the poll, Kate, right?
I know. Exactly.
I specifically identified using Patreon as unfair.
Oh no, that's true. But then the results are like use a cumbersome workaround because it's really unfair to existing. I'm just
I think that's the argument for it. It's cumbersome, but it's really unfair to bill people twice for things.
The other thing is that when you give people
in the comments,
three choices in the middle, like people are always going to pick the middle, like pretty much always.
Dan in the comment does ask, it depends on the frequency of the events. So Dan, for the purposes of the second poll, assume that it's one live event, one Lawfare live event a week, with the possibility of extras coming in based on current events. So not daily, but not once a month either.
It would be always at least one, and then we would on spot occasions do extra ones. So it could be, I would say it's sort of a minimum of one a week, but it could be more than that.
Yeah, think about it in terms of those of you who are Lawfare podcast listeners. In the past few years, we have done many different emergency podcasts where something big drops and suddenly you get Ben and Susan and me and Scott Anderson or Margaret Taylor or somebody coming together to give instant analysis on the news. Think of it in that way, which is there might be a regular scheduled Lawfare Live every week, but when something breaks, we could do a Lawfare Live event like this and answer your questions about it in a video format.
Right.
I think it sounds like a
And if
really
that
great
takes it
idea.
down to people saying they want to pay only one, if that takes it down to people saying they only want to pay $1 a month for that because that sounds like it sucks, that's fair. That's why the poll is there.
And as to the people who are suggesting tiered membership, we will certainly do tiered membership. For example, I plan to do, a semi-regular, ask the editor-in-chief, which would be presumably reserved for, you'd have different levels, different events that were available at different support levels. All right. So one other question about the Politico story, which is, I could not tell from reading Natasha's story, and maybe we should have Natasha on to ask her about it. But I could not tell whether the reason that the CIA director was keeping Russia reporting from the White House was that she's afraid of offending Trump and wants to play to Trump's pathologies, which is certainly the Trumpist instinct, but she's not a Trumpist, she's a long-time, fairly well-regarded career CIA person. Gina Haspel, whatever she is, she's not a Trumpist. She may be a torturer, but she's not a Trumpist. But one possibility is that she's playing to Trump. Another possibility is that she's she's trying to protect the agency from Trump by not poking at letting the analysis reach him in ways that would infuriate him and thus cause him to treat the agency the way he has treated, say, the FBI. A third possibility is that she's just trying to keep her own head down. How do you read what Gina Haspel is up to here?
All of those are possibilities, and perhaps the best possibility that is still out of sorts with tradition is the president has such a trigger on Russia that in order for him to pay attention to other intelligence, get distracted, we are better off not giving him analysis on Russia unless it is absolutely essential. Because you could imagine that, he hears a report on Russia and he doesn't like it, and suddenly he can focus on nothing else. Well, guess what? At that point in the briefing, you're done. I mean, I've given these briefings, and at a certain point when you're briefing, if somebody is obsessed about one topic, they don't pay attention to the rest. And I think Trump is like that to, 100 times greater than any customer I ever briefed. So that's one interpretation, is you're not giving him what the threshold for any other president would be on Russian intelligence because you're afraid he'll be distracted. But I can't rule out what you mentioned, which is maybe it's to protect Russian sources and methods. Maybe they actually say, you know what, we're just so uncomfortable with the way he treats this intelligence that we will deal with it by briefing it directly to the Secretary of Defense or directly to others who can take action on it. But it's just not going to be considered presidential at this point, and we'll focus on other things.
All right, we've got a bunch of questions, but before we go to them, Kate tells me she has a silly question that's going to make her look silly.
We've done this before,
but apparently silly. I don't have any sense of self like ego or anything else, so I'm fine with that. So Devin Nunes' cow. What? Why? I don't understand the joke. Why is it called Devin Nunes' cow?
Do you want to take that, Dave?
Someone else can answer this.
Handle.
But I thought it was because Devin Nunes back in California before he ran for Congress had a family farm. That was my understanding. Maybe
a dairy farm to be particular specific, and he claimed to be a dairy farmer in
Portuguese
his district.
ancestry.
Yes, he
Oh.
claimed to be a dairy farmer in his district, which he used to be,
Oh.
but his family dairy farm was, I believe, picked up in the middle of the night and moved to Iowa. And so there was some question about his whether he actually has a existing dairy farm. And so whoever is behind the Devin Nunes's cow account, and nobody knows who that is making a joke about Devin Nunes's
Got it.
supposed past as a dairy farmer.
Or,
So follow
or
up
bear
question.
with me here. It could be for an other reason.
Oh, David, you had
Go ahead,
you had
Kate.
time to think about that one and whether to go there.
And not say it. You had time to think about it and not say it. And you said
I'm
it anyway.
sorry. I wasn't trying to move this forward at all.
Oh my God.
This is getting ugly.
So really quickly, follow-up question. Would you vote for a Carter, like a bipartisan Carter peanut farm and Devin Nunes's dairy farm a ticket? Don't you think that would be like the perfect ticket? No? No one?
No.
That's
What do you mean
bad,
by
Kate.
perfect?
Okay. Sorry, go to Daniel.
Yeah.
Go to Daniel.
All right,
Go.
so we have an issue to discuss with Daniel, which is he's not in his chair.
Leave him alone.
He's leaning forward, and he's got his background is different, and it doesn't seem to be a fake background. It seems
nice
to be.
Daniel.
I'm being nice to Daniel. I just I want to verify. First of all, are you in the same location?
Yes,
Secondly,
I'm in the same location.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. And third, I assume that background is real, right?
That is a real background.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
but not like a fake Zoom background kind of
That's
thing.
correct.
All right. So we now know that Daniel actually has an existence outside of that chair that always threatens to swallow him whole. Your question, sir.
What are 3 intelligence-related reforms would you like to see for a potential Biden administration to push for?
Wow. Intelligence reforms are among the hardest because of the unintended consequences, right? So, I mean, think about it. The only major intelligence reforms we've had in the last 50 years are the institution of oversight committees in the late 1970s, which generally are a positive thing. And then the changes about 15 years ago with the enaction of the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2005, I believe, which instituted the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which has a mixed legacy. The only thing that I would suggest is for intelligence reform that you don't do anything quickly based on one experience, because it's the kind of thing that you probably do need one of those blue ribbon commissions to get together and say, what should we do, so that you don't make a knee-jerk response to something that has negative consequences. One thing that I think would be good, however, is to make sure that the Intelligence Whistleblower Act, that there's more teeth to it, because what we saw regarding that, the whole episode of how that was brought forward and how the acting director of national intelligence and the inspector general and how different people interpreted whether this needed to be brought to Congress because it was or was not an actual intelligence activity, that needs to be tightened up, or else there's a huge loophole for criminal acts or something just less than criminal acts not to be reported and treated as whistleblowing.
We have a question from Joel the Nudge.
Well, which one?
Anyone you like. It's always up to you, man.
Okay, so I had a bit of sort of like
You can even ask two.
like from the vets who've been here a while, because we kind of got to talking about them. Yeah. I wasn't here at the very beginning, and so I am kind of curious. How do you guys know each other? And how did you like
Kate and I know each other, or how David and I know each other?
You and Kate, how do you guys know each other, and why did you decide to kind of do this in the first place?
Oh, man.
Well, Kate and I know each other from a conference at the Hoover Institution a few years back. Jack Goldsmith and I were editing a paper series. We asked Kate for a contribution. We invited her out to Stanford to comment on some of the papers. I was super impressed with her thoughts that day, and cornered her at the dinner at the end of the conference and said, we chatted for a while, and I said, hey, we should find a fun project to do together sometime. And we kept in touch, and we became good friends. And then at the beginning of lockdown, I'm sitting around and I have this idea that I want to do this show, and I just tweeted at Kate, you want to do it with me? And she's took a long time to respond because she was out gardening.
New York City. No, I was fleeing New York City. Well, actually,
that considering better offers.
Yeah, she was considering better offers, and she said, "Yeah." So we've this is now day 181, and we're chugging along. Kate is one of the...
and I'm both super grateful and super impressed that the two of you have dedicated yourselves to providing this for all of us. I don't know how. I mean, I end up kind of chatting with some of the other regulars and stuff, and the sense of gratitude is really pretty profound.
That's very sweet of you.
It's a tough thing to show up every day at 4:00 and really commit to that. And those of us that have been around a while, we understand how hard that's been, and we're truly thankful.
Well, thank you. It's it's been a super pleasure to do. There are some days that you kind of don't necessarily feel like doing it.
I bet.
But there has been no day that afterwards I'm not glad I did it. And there is something cool about the discipline of it. And to be fair, I have, as I've been pretty candid about, have an ulterior motive in this, which is David and I have been road testing some ideas for this other thing.
So we're the test monkeys. I did feel a little like a rat.
I'm the test monkey.
It doesn't really require that road test would work fine if we did it once a month. Of course, we don't need to, but thank you very much. It's very sweet of you.
No, that means a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Joel. Thank you so much. Yeah, totally.
Which brings us to Christopher. How do you pronounce your last name, Christopher?
It's arduous. Like
arduous.
Yes, exactly. So I might actually need a little assist from Ben to get the precise wording of the tweet. But David, do you remember your infamous or famous typo tweet from
yes.
Lawfare?
This is the best typo in the history of Lawfare, and it deserves the full story by David Priess himself.
I not only remember it, I relive it in my dreams every night. So there was a story on Lawfare, and I forget the author. I'm sorry, but it was a quite good short article about Israel and Lebanon and Hezbollah and issues in the region. And one of the issues being addressed was the incendiary balloons that were being sent over the border, and then they would drop onto the land and they would explode. And it's an ingenious low-tech weapon to use in this era, but it was something that was immensely disturbing. And as you all know, if you tweet or if you type quickly on any device, autocorrect is there to help you, except in the 99% of cases where it does not. And in this case, I was typing quickly, and I did not look back at the tweet before sending, and I must have missed a letter in incendiary balloons. I was happy I got incendiary right, or at least close to right, but somehow it came out as the weaponization of incendiary baboons, which which also would be an ingenious method of guerrilla warfare, but
No
it
pun
was
intended.
not intended. Yeah, we did not mean to make a baboon joke in that case. So I immediately text Ben and say, what the fuck, Ben? I think we should delete and resend. And I don't remember what you said, Ben, the exact words, but the vibe of your note was, absolutely do not delete. This is one of the best moments in Lawfare Twitter history.
I said we are never. I think what I said was we are never deleting this tweet.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I can't.
The author's office made him incendiary baboon mugs, which he sent me a picture of.
Are they just baboons on fire? What is it?
They were
flaming. Is that it? Are the flames up here or are the flames down there? Like
no, they were like coming
everywhere?
off the shoulders and head. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oof.
Chris
I mean,
has
from an animal rights perspective,
has a follow-up about the tweet
this.
edit button. Sorry, bring Chris back in.
I hate
bring him
the
back
idea of the tweet edit. Yeah,
really?
The whole tweet edit thing. Think about the disaster of somebody tweeting something and then immediately deleting it, and
that is this is one of those classic things in which people are like, wouldn't it be so wonderful if we could do that? And then if you actually
unintended consequences.
put it into practice, people will have liked a tweet that said, I hate Joe Biden. And then they will say, I love Joe Biden. And all these people
much
love
worse.
that tweet.
Right.
Yes, much worse. Obviously.
All right.
I'm just trying to give it an example.
Christopher has a follow-up question. And then Kate has a particularly awesome piece of merch to preview for us before we wrap. Christopher?
Yeah, so I was
ask Joel's permission.
The unintended consequences of having a tweet edit button and be able to take something that was an innocent mistake like that versus doing something that could be offensive or incendiary or blasphemous or something.
Just rub it in.
I think incendiary is not the word you want in this particular context.
It's hard, Chris. We all get anchored on words. It's a very natural thing. Don't
You're killing
feel
me,
bad.
Christopher.
All right.
Oh my God.
Kate?
Okay, wait. I'm going to share this. Okay, so I haven't gotten Joel's permission. Oh, wait. No, he did. He said okay. So
this is
because this is not yet official merch. This is just a mock-up of something that Joel made. Joel the Nudge made for In Lieu of Fun, which I think is pretty amazing. And here we go. This is the hold on, you have to go to the full screen of that. There we go. We have what would Lisa Page do tote bag with the beautiful rendering of the paper bag puppet, kind of like you can still see the folds here in with it. I think that this is the world's best inside joke and we should make it happen.
Yeah, we should make it happen and put it up on the merch store.
Oh my God. There's just poor John Bordeaux is on vacation right now and has not been watching In Lieu of Fun. And he has manned the merch store and made all of this happen. But this is the most epic of all of the things. I think that this is just amazing. I'm going to go to
Alice
the farmer's
asks
market with
whether
this.
Lisa Page has signed off on this.
Oh, yes.
So I think it's fair to say that it's not really up to Lisa. It's, of course, up to the puppet. The puppet is enthusiastic about it and has been texting us things like, "Oh my God, that's so fucking fantastic."
I am blown away.
Yeah,
I am literally speechless. But the puppet can't be speechless because it has an inner voice.
Yes.
So.
All right, David Priess. Before we let you go, how are you feeling about the election?
Oh God, why would you ask him that?
I wish
question?
you wouldn't have
We're on
asked
such
that
a high
to end
note,
this.
Ben. We're all happy.
We're in the election. So how do I feel about the election going on right now? Fine. people in Northern Virginia are voting like crazy in person. People are mailing in ballots. That the election's going great right now. I'm not so worried about the election. I'm worried about the night of when election is finished, and the night when suddenly all of these plans go into action. I'm worried about the post-election more than I've worried about any post-election that I've been alive for.
David Priess, you're a great American. Thank you for joining us. We got some interesting data on the two polls today, admittedly from a highly biased sample, which is the group of people that hangs out on In Lieu of Fun. We will be back tomorrow with who's coming tomorrow, Kate?
We don't know.
I thought you texted me somebody who was
Jack Balkan's coming next Wednesday.
Oh, next Wednesday.
What?
I did chat with Ann Applebaum, who said she might be able to come Friday unless she falls asleep. Which makes the show
That's a good caveat for everyone.
Do you want to be the one that wakes up Ann Applebaum in the middle of the night in Poland?
Ann and I have I could call Ann and say, "Hey, wake up! You're supposed to be on In Lieu of Fun," and she would grump at me. Can
we buy her some espresso or something?
Yeah, I think we'll see. I'm working with Ann to see if we can make this happen. We will figure out something for tomorrow. In any event, it will happen 22 hours and 59 minutes from now. And until then, Kate?
We don't have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we have tote bags and completely marginally offensive wall murals of maps that people have painted on their walls
and
without
wiped off their foreheads.
Wiped off their foreheads. Bye, everybody.